Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Lost His Memories and Become Soldier Among Supernatural Beings movie. Before we start, please go support the Soul Reaper 301 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Issei is a male in this story. Chapter 1. Pilot. Authors Pav. Kuo, a city located in Japan, has the typical buildings and typical inhabitants that any other city in the world has. Whether it is the typical buildings or workplaces, the typical schools and academies, there is practically nothing missing in Kuo. However, we will focus on the park in the city, where we can see how in different parts of the park, there were several boys and girls playing happily while being watched by their parents. On the other hand, there were adult and young couples either out for a walk or having a picnic, enjoying the beautiful day. However, we will focus on a man of about 31 years old, together with a woman of about 29, both had the same hair color, although they had different eye colors. But if we look closer, being carried on horseback by the man, there was a 7-year-old boy on top of the man bearing a slight resemblance to him. "When are we going to eat the ice cream?" Toussaint said, asked the child with excitement and wanting to eat the ice cream now. "Be patient, Daiki, if we're going to eat ice cream, we'll all eat together, okay?" He said, asked with a small smile, while Daiki just pouted as a sign that he was angry. "But I want to eat now," he said in an angry tone, ready to throw a tantrum. "Listen to me well, Daiki, you should not always think about yourself, that is being selfish. Tell me, Kyoko or Ice, were you ever selfish or did they mean something to you?" Asked the somewhat serious woman looking at her son, who just looked away. Daiki. "No, they didn't, Ka-san," he said looking away, but still angry. That had made the woman sigh. The two adults continued walking while Daiki was still on his father's shoulders. After a few moments, the three arrived at a part of the park where there was an 11-year-old brunette girl playing against another girl, with light brown hair tied in 2 pigtails, and being 7 years old. The woman, for her part, gave the man a bag and then approached the two girls a little, while the man lowered Daiki from his shoulders and they both proceeded to go to a bench near them. "Woman. Kyoko, Irina-chan, Ice, come here, we brought ice cream," she exclaimed, drawing the attention of both brunette girls. "Kyoko, Irina. We're coming, Ka-san, Mrs. Natsumi," they both exclaimed, going towards where the woman was. When the two girls were with Natsumi, the three of them proceeded to approach Daiki and the man, who was taking out some small containers of ice cream from a bag. "Man. Here you go, we brought you your favorite flavors. I hope you enjoy it," he said, giving each of them a tub of ice cream. "Kyoko, Daiki, Irina. Thank you very much, Toussaint, Mr. Hero," they exclaimed gratefully and happily, opening their respective containers of ice cream. "Natsumi. What did we tell you, Irina-chan? You can call us by our names," she said with a smile towards her children's friend, sitting next to her husband. Irina understood Natsumi-san. However, someone else was missing, and both brown-haired adults clearly noticed that. "Natsumi. Hey girls, do you know where Ice is?" she said, asked, surprised not to see her third and last son, who she didn't see anywhere. "Kyoko. Didn't he go with you?" she said, asked, surprised looking at her mother, who quickly lost the smile she had to get up from the bench. "Natsumi. It's not funny what you said, daughter, where is she?" Ice, she said, asked somewhat seriously, while she began to worry. "Kyoko. I'm not joking, Ka-san, I'm serious," she said, stopping eating her ice cream and also starting to worry. Natsumi, upon hearing that from her daughter, did not hesitate for a second longer and began to run through the park in search of her son. "Natsumi. Ice, Ise, wherever you are, come out son," she exclaimed worriedly looking for her son. Natsumi, not receiving any answer, continued running through the park, taking the trouble to look at the backs of the trees, thinking that her son was hiding behind one. But nothing happened, so she decided to go deeper into the park in search of the child. Hiro, for his part, had stayed with his children in Arena so that nothing would happen to them, in addition to calling the police. The children felt bad and worried, but Kyoko more so, who was shaking and worried about her little brother. But returning to Natsumi, the brunette ran through the park worried and desperate, shouting her son's name over and over again. Clearly Natsumi caught the attention of many people who approached her to try to help find her son. Natsumi had shown them a photo of her son that she had in her wallet. The boy was only 4 years old with somewhat light brown hair, as well as having brown eyes. Without wasting any time, everyone had split up to search for the boy, while Natsumi also searched for him, asking the people walking through the park if they saw her son and showing them the photo if they could recognize him. Of all the people I asked that, they had all denied having seen him, but still took the trouble to look for the boy. For almost 2 hours, many people were looking for Issei, and even when the police arrived, a group began taking statements from several people while other groups searched for the boy. Natsumi, for her part, was devastated, regretful and wanting to cry. All she did was repeat her son's name over and over again, her gaze lost in space. Change of scene. After several hours at the police headquarters, having written a form with all of her son's information and thanks to that form, the police have filed a missing person report. We can see how Hiro was about to enter his house, being escorted by a policeman. Hiro. Thank you for bringing me here, officer, he said in a grateful tone, but not in a good mood. Police. Point 1. Don't worry Mr. Hayadu, we will also contact you in case something comes up regarding your son, he said something serious, while Hiro nodded totally discouraged. Hiro. Okay officer, thanks for everything and have a good night, he said without enthusiasm, while the officer told him to rest and then left. Hiro, for his part, entered his house, heading towards the living room. There was no one there, but he chose to go to the kitchen to drink some water. But upon entering the kitchen, she met Irina's father and his friend, Takumi Shido. Note. I have no idea what the canon name of Irina's father and mother is, but I would really appreciate it if you could tell me about it here, end of note. Takumi. Hiro, I heard what happened, did you find or know anything about Issei, he said asked with a worried tone when he saw his friend. Hiro. No, they didn't find anything about Issei. A detective told me that the person who could have kidnapped him must have been a professional or someone with a lot of experience to leave the park with Issei without being seen by anyone, he said with a somewhat serious tone, but with all the intention of wanting to kill the bastard who took his son. Takumi. I'm sorry about what happened, Hiro. I didn't think something like this would happen, he said with a sad and sorry tone towards his friend. Without further ado, the two remained in a deathly silence, but that silence did not last long as someone entered the kitchen. Irina's mother. Me Hiro, it's good to see you, it must be a very difficult time you're going through, she said with pity, hugging the brown-haired boy to at least try to lift his spirits a little. Hiro. You have no idea Yoko how are Natsumi and the kids? He said asked worried about his wife and children. Yoko. Natsumi is in her room, it was difficult to get her to eat something, but in the end she did, now she is sleeping. Daiki and Kyoko have also had dinner and are now going to bed, and they have already brushed their teeth, she said, giving her a brief summary of what happened in the house. Takumi. You can count on us for whatever you need, Hiro, even if they need money to rescue Issei, don't hesitate to ask for it, he said with complete confidence in helping his friend. Hiro. Thank you for everything, Yoko, Takumi. I really appreciate it, he said in a very grateful tone towards his friends and neighbors. Yoko. We are leaving, Hiro. Irina is waiting for us in the hallway, besides, she is very tired. Hiro. Okay, let me walk you to the exit, he said, letting the Shido leave the kitchen first and following behind them. In the middle of the hallway was a sad and dejected Irina, who was also very tired. Her father noticed this and proceeded to lift her up in his arms and continue on his way with his wife. After that, the Shido were outside the Hayadu house saying goodbye to Hiro, who did the same to go back into his house. But the moment he entered, the brown-haired boy locked the door as well as locking the windows and turning off the lights. After that, Hiro went to the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water and drinking the liquid, then leaving the glass in the sink and turning off the kitchen light. After that, he was going up the stairs towards Daiki's room. When he arrived, he found his son lying down and hugging a stuffed dragon looking at the ceiling. Hiro. Is something wrong, son? He said asked approaching his son, who just sat on his bed looking at his father. Daiki. I can't sleep too, and I can't stop thinking about where Itado could be, he said sadly, thinking that he would never see his younger brother again. Hiro. Don't worry, son, your brother will come back, I know it, and I have a feeling, he said, having enormous faith and confidence that his son would be found sooner or later. Daiki didn't say anything, the little brown-haired boy lay back down in his bed, while his father covered him a little with a blanket. Hiro. Rest, son, he said, giving Daiki a kiss on the forehead and turning off the light. Hiro just proceeded to leave his son's room, about to close the door, but. Daiki. Leave it open please, he said with some pleading and fear, since he was still not used to sleeping in complete darkness. Hiro. It's okay, he said in an understandable tone towards his son, leaving the door open, while Daiki proceeded to close his eyes ready to sleep. After that, the adult brown-haired boy proceeded to go to his daughter's room. When he arrived, he found the door closed, so he decided to open it. When he entered, he found the light off, thinking that his daughter was already sleeping, so he decided to leave, but he stopped when he heard some small sobs. Hiro turned on the light, causing Kyoko to look in his direction, noticing how her daughter was crying, which worried him as he went towards her. Hiro. Daughter, what's wrong, why are you crying? He said asked sadly and worriedly, hugging his daughter, to which the brunette reciprocated that hug by crying on her father's shoulder. Kyoko. It's all my fault too, san, if only I had paid attention to the fact that Ice was with me, none of this would be happening, she said with a broken tone, blaming herself for the kidnapping of her little brother. Hiro. It's not your fault, daughter. It was as much my fault as your mother's. It was a lot more responsibility than you could bear, and we should never have left them there playing. You and Irina, much less, are to blame. he said while wiping away her tears and trying to take away the guilt she hadn't felt. Hiro. Listen to me carefully, Kyoko, I'll tell you the same thing I told Daiki. Ice will come back, it may not be tomorrow, in a week or maybe in months, but I have a feeling, and I know that he will come back, I assure you, he said with the same faith and confidence with which he told Daiki. Kyoko for her part nodded in confirmation and believing in the words her father told her, Hiro just hugged her a little tighter, so that minutes later, Kyoko felt a little better than before. Hiro. For now we must rest and be strong for Ice, he said, putting his daughter to bed while the brunette settled on her. Hiro. Rest, daughter, if you need anything just shout and I'll come running, okay? He said, giving his daughter a kiss on the forehead, who just nodded again. After that, Hiro turned off the light and closed the door. The brunette proceeded to go to the room he shared with his wife. Upon arriving, he saw how Natsumi was up looking out the window at the yard of the house. Natsumi. I need you to answer me something, Hiro, she said, having heard the moment her husband entered the room. Hiro. What do you want me to answer? Natsumi, he said, asked, approaching his wife and also looking at the patio of his house through the window. Natsumi. What happened to us at that moment? Why did it occur to us to leave Ice with Kyoko and Irina? What would have happened if instead of Ice, it had been Kyoko or Irina or maybe all three together? I want you to answer me that, she said, asked with a broken tone and having many more questions regarding the kidnapping of her son. But he also began to think what would have happened if they had taken Kyoko or Irina, maybe even all three. Hiro. I don't know, she also asked me that question after talking to Kyoko, but we must recognize that she and Irina are not to blame, but we are for leaving them with Issei and not one of us staying to watch over them. Although we should also be thankful that they were not taken, he said in a somewhat serious tone, but also sad seeing his wife. Natsumi. Yes, you're right, I can't blame them for that, she said, acknowledging the worst of her mistakes and blaming herself for everything. Natsumi just kept looking at the yard through the window. She saw how her children were playing with Irina there, but her gaze was focused on Issei. Staying hypnotized and focused on the tender and sweet smile that little Issei had marked on his face. But she stopped seeing that the moment her husband touched her shoulder, seeing how the patio was empty and dark being illuminated by the moonlight. The brunette just turned to look at her son, noticing how he looked at her with sadness and concern. Hiro. Let's rest for a while, Natsumi, tomorrow we will continue with the search for Ice or at least try to cooperate with the police, and if necessary, let's gather a reasonable amount of money in case they ask us for that for Ice's ransom, he said, thinking that his son's kidnappers were going to ask for money in exchange for letting him go. Natsumi. Okay, she said with a lost look, going to bed. Hiro for his part went to the bathroom to shower and change clothes. However, if we focus on Kyoko's room, we can see how the little brunette was awake without being able to sleep and much less knowing that her brother is out there. She felt so bad and guilty, she felt guilty for not having noticed her little brother or even paying attention to him. Even if her father told her a million times that it wasn't her fault. One way or another she would blame herself for the rest of her life, but all she could do was believe her father's words. Kyoko. Please, Ataudo, come back, she said in a sad and guilty tone, looking at the sky through the window. Kyoko's pav. Back then I thought that Toussaint's words would be true and that Ataudo would be found in a few weeks or maybe months, but number 13 years have passed and since then no trace of Ice or evidence of who his kidnappers could be was found. Even though Toussaint managed to raise the amount of almost $500,000 for Ice's rescue, many of his friends and neighbors contributed a portion. However, my parents waited for about 2 months waiting for a call to rescue Issei. There were even officers who were waiting for the call but nothing. A detective, supposedly an expert in kidnapping cases, was going to talk to my parents, but before talking to them, Daiki and I were sent to our rooms. But I stayed in a part of the stairs where no one could see me and I could hear everything, but it was a mistake. That detective told my parents that Ataudo was not kidnapped for money, but for worse and more horrible things. Among them, the enormous possibility of being used to film child pornography, being sold as a kind of slave to people with a lot of money and power, among other things. Hearing that made my guilt grow too much, however when Toussaint and Kassan heard that, they didn't take it very well. But as if that wasn't enough, the detective also said that we would never be able to see Ice again. Kassan fainted upon hearing that, and Toussaint and the detective took her to the hospital, while Irina's parents stayed with us to take care of us. Irina even tried to cheer us up, but because of the guilt I felt at that moment, I couldn't play with her and Daiki, so I just locked myself in my room. However, after that day everything changed. As time went by, both Kassan's mental and physical health began to worsen, to the point of starting to drink and start senseless fights with Toussaint. She got so worse that Toussaint had no other option but to put her in a mental hospital for about 6 years. At that time, Daiki was 11 and I was 13, but it still affected us a lot, although Toussaint was the most devastated. And speaking of him, despite the blows and insults that Ka-san had given him, he never dared to shout at him or raise his hand. He didn't take it out on anyone, much less on us. On the contrary, he helped us in everything he could, giving his best to lift our spirits. Even during the time when Ka-san was hospitalized, he always stayed by our side. He would come home early after work and help us with our studies after dinner. Of course, he had to hire a babysitter to pick us up from school and take care of us until he arrived. Since a few weeks after Ka-san was admitted, Irina's parents and even Irina herself left Kuo to move to England for a job they gave to Takumi-san. And since there was no one to take care of us, Tu-san couldn't ask one of his friends to take care of us since, after all, each one had their own life and he had no choice but to hire a babysitter, although from what I remember, that girl wasn't that bad. But even with the enormous weight and responsibility he carried, he always remained faithful and firm. He was practically a kind of pillar that held up his family, supporting us both emotionally and financially, without ever leaving Daiki and me aside. But when he didn't have the energy to get up and go to work, that's where his friends came in. They would cover for him at work so he could take the day off or attend events or things at our schools and then be with us the rest of the day. Even to this day, he has faith and trusts that Issei is healthy and that one of these days he will return, but he was not the only one after all. I also had that thought. However, after a long time, Tu-san received a call from the psychiatric hospital where Ka-san was admitted. We couldn't help but be happy since she seemed to be feeling much better than before. The day she came, she looked much better than when we last saw her. She had apologized to us, but more to Tu-san, who was the one who received the worst parts of Ka-san. Seeing her smile like before made me happy, but from time to time Tu-san would tell me that she had nightmares about ice. However, that damn Daiki wasn't home when Ka-san left the mental hospital, and to top it all off, he told me without shame or embarrassment that he was at a friend's house watching porn. And speaking of Daiki, as time went by, that good-for-nothing idiot changed a lot, especially after meeting that dirty old man. Since then, he's been looking at adult magazines as well as movies of that kind. But it didn't just change because of that, but when he met and joined the entourage of Ria's Gremory, a pure-blooded, high-class demon, in addition to knowing that she possessed a Longinus-type sacred gear called boosted gear. His damn ego and arrogance grew so much that to this day he believes that the universe revolves around him, but as if that were enough. The idiot leaders and the girls in his harem only feed more of all that Daiki and much more. But one day, he came to my parents' house very angry and Tu-san asked him the reason for his anger, but for some reason Daiki had raised his voice to Tu-san. That day I was lucky enough to be at their house, since at that time I was 19 and I was already living alone in an apartment. But when I heard him yell at Tu-san, I couldn't help but feel happy to be there at that moment, and without ignoring him or feeling sorry or pity for him, I broke a considerable amount of his bones. I don't give a shit if he's the Surkuyuite or whatever, if he has political or magical power. Nobody, absolutely nobody, insults or yells at my parents, even if he were to be my brother, cousin or some relative, and whoever is going to do that should think twice before doing it. Although at that time Daiki had only been a demon for about 4 days, therefore it was not very difficult to do so. Even today I can maintain a long battle against him and defeat him, despite the fact that he is Ria's most powerful piece. But how was I able to hit Daiki that day is simple. I have been reincarnated as a demon long before Daiki was, more specifically a month and a half ago. Sona Citri was the demon who reincarnated me into one, with me being her second rook piece. Of course she asked me if I wanted to join her entourage. She gave me the choice of accepting or refusing, and she was even willing to respect whatever decision I chose. For my part, I was about to refuse until Ice's name came to mind. So I proposed that if I found Ice I would become part of her peerage. She thought about it for a few minutes and then accepted my request. I was hoping that Sona would find my little brother, since the police, due to lack of evidence, lack of suspects, lack of many things, had put aside the investigation of Issei and declared it inconclusive due to lack of the things I have said. After that, for 3 whole weeks Sona had been determined to try to search and find where Ice was. She even contacted her father, who sent some guards willing to help in the search. But it was useless. None of the demons sent could find anything about Ice. Sona had apologized to me for not finding a Taudo and that I had the right to refuse to join her peerage. However, I still agreed and became part of her entourage as I couldn't say no after the great amount of time and dedication she put into searching for Ice to find him. Even to this day she is still trying to find Isay even though she wasn't being forced to. But to pay back everything she did and was doing for me, I decided to return the favor by starting to go in hard and severe. As the months went by I increased my workouts more and more, plus I had the right meal plans to burn calories. Although I didn't only do it for Kaichu, but also for my parents to protect them and keep them safe, even Ice if he returns. But thanks to my training and the adventures I've had in the supernatural world, little by little I was becoming stronger and stronger, to the point of having my sacred gear, as well as the balance breaker in complete control. Even Azazel, the former leader of the Fallen, confirmed to me that I had a high chance of getting a second balance breaker or an evolution of it. However, in order not to remain stuck in that limit that I had, I have managed to make the wife of the Mao Lucifer, Graphia Lucifuge, who is called the most powerful queen, train me in magic. And not only her, but also the Mao Leviathan, the Cadre Penemu, and even the Seraph Gabriel herself and the Dragon Queen of Karma Tiamat helped me in my training and regimen. My current power is or perhaps exceeds that of an ultimate class devil, and I have the reputation of being called the one-hit destructive chestnut or simply as the strongest tower. But she wasn't the only one, all the girls in the Kaichu entourage also trained to the point that in the raiding games or some important event, we made the name of the Citri clan and the nobility of Kaichu grow. After a somewhat long time, despite the different negative opinions of some demons, and including the elders of the demonic council, Kaichu was able to open an academy for low and middle class demons, as well as humans who were reincarnated as demons, to learn about the raiding games. At first, few demons attended, as well as reincarnated people, either because the place was small, there were not enough classrooms and teachers, or because there were a lot of absences. But as time went by and with a helping hand from Kaichu, the academy was remodeled from time to time, becoming bigger and bigger, as well as having things that weren't there before, or if they were there, but had flaws. And well, the student rate was growing and growing. Kaichu thanked us a lot for the great help and support we gave her, she even started to cry because of how grateful she was. That day was definitely the happiest and most joyful day for Kaichu. She may be cold and would be most of the time. But she is a very good king as well as a friend, making me think that it was no mistake to have joined her. However, I had to tell Tusan and Ka-san about the supernatural world, since most of the time they would call me either while in the middle of a mission or an important meeting. I couldn't help but make them worry about me, even Ka-san gave me a few good slaps that to this day I remember that they hurt a lot. I've been hit by Graphia-san in our training sessions, but those hits are nothing compared to the beatings Ka-san gave me. But leaving that aside, after Ka-san had given me those slaps, she had hugged me tightly and started crying on my shoulders. While she was crying she said that she didn't want to lose me, that she didn't want to lose any of her children again including Daiki, despite the stupid things he does she still loves him. For my part I couldn't help but feel bad, I accepted Ka-san's hug and tried to calm her down, which worked about 5 minutes later. Ka-san along with Tusan accepted my decision that I continue to be in the supernatural world, after all at that time I was already an adult being 22 years old. However, when Tusan and Ka-san met the faction leaders, without any fear or trepidation they threatened them if anything bad were to happen to me. I thought they were joking, but between Ka-san's sweet smile and Tusan's serious look, it made me think that what they said wasn't a threat but a warning and that they were serious about carrying it out. However, no matter how much time has passed or what I have done, I still blame myself for what happened to Ice. And the nightmares I have had during this time remind me of that. End of Kyoko's story plus present. Right now in the present, we will focus on the Haidu house, well better said the Haidu mansion, since the old house of the aforementioned had been remodeled by some demons that Zeoticus Gremory had sent. But that doesn't matter now, in this mansion we can see how after a good dinner, the Haidu family together with the Gremory family were having a pleasant conversation drinking some cups of tea and eating some cookies. There were even the female members of Ria's entourage since after all, they lived there with Daiki and speaking of the Surkuryute, he was not present. Then Alana. I must admit that you prepared a delicious meal and a good tea Natsumi-san said Ria's mother in a sincere tone and drinking some of her tea. Natsumi. I'm glad you liked it, Venezuelan lady said also sincerely, a 42-year-old Natsumi, also drinking some of her tea. But despite her age, the brunette remained a beautiful 36-year-old woman, having almost no imperfections in her hair, face or body. Although Natsumi was not the only one, since her husband was 44 years old but looked like he was 40 and his body was a little more muscular than before. Then Alana. By the way Kyoko-chan, when will you get your pieces? After all, you have been promoted to supreme class she said asked, looking at a 24-year-old Kyoko. Kyoko? I actually already have my pieces for a long time, Venezuelan lady, but I'm not interested in having someone as a servant, she said answered, remembering that she had all her pieces inside a case that is in a pocket dimension. Zeoticus. I hope you don't mind if I get straight to the point about our visit. Mr. Hero the Redeed said asked somewhat seriously, leaving his half-finished cup of tea on a table near him and looking at Patriarch Haidu. Hero. Of course, what do you want to talk about? Mr. Zeoticus he said asked also leaving his cup of tea on a table near him and looking at the Redeed. The atmosphere in the place had become a little tense, both patriarchs looked at each other in a somewhat serious manner. But that tense atmosphere was broken only by the arrival of a Daiki with the age of 20. Daiki. I'm sorry I'm late, I just had a lot of things to do in the Op-I Dragon studio, he said in a tired tone, going to sit next to Ria's, one of his future wives. Kyoko. Do you think this is the time to arrive? Daiki, she said, asked somewhat seriously and annoyed, since her brother practically did not respect the hours when attending a meeting or something of utmost importance, and if he did, he arrived 3 hours late. But always with the same excuse, either I had things to do at school or something like that. However, it was the fault of the leaders who gave him this habit, instead of giving him a kind of scolding or something like that, so that he wouldn't be late for meetings, they let it go as if it wasn't important. Daiki. Kyoko was busy, do you have any idea what I have to go through there? He said, asked with an annoyed tone, looking with some hatred towards his sister, since for a long time both of them had begun to get along badly. Kyoko. Just respect the schedules you want, she said seriously, finishing drinking her tea. Daiki. How have you been? Lord, Lady Gremory, he said, asked with a somewhat haughty smile, greeting his in-laws. Zioticus. I'll get to the point. Ria's, like the girls in her entourage, wants to break the engagement with Daiki, she said directly and seriously, which left the living room completely silent. Hero. Sai, if you want my confirmation to break this engagement, you have mine, he said, something serious, agreeing to break his son's engagement with Ria's and the girls in his entourage. Natsumi. They have mine too, she said in a somewhat serious and sincere way, agreeing with her husband. Aiki-ka-san, Tu-san, do you know what they say, at least think he didn't finish speaking as his father looked at him seriously. Hero. I don't need to know the reason, Daiki, just by seeing that lipstick mark on your neck, I realize everything, he said seriously, seeing how on his son's neck there was a lipstick mark. Of course, Daiki covered his neck upon noticing that, but that was totally useless and unnecessary for him to do so since everyone had noticed. Hero. I apologize for what my son has done, I mean it, he said, getting up from his seat and bowing in forgiveness, just like his wife. Zioticus. Don't worry, you don't have to do that. Well, with that settled, we'll be off, thank you for the nice welcome and dinner, she said in a grateful tone, getting up from her seat like the others. The Kendo for her part had made a magic circle, and then everyone said goodbye to the Haidu family and thanked them for everything, disappearing in particles of light. Kyoko. Sai, I must definitely congratulate you on how much of an idiot you are, Daiki, she said in a somewhat mocking tone, looking at her brother's face of disbelief. Daiki. Why did you allow that, Tu-san? We were going to get married in a few weeks, but he didn't finish speaking as his mother approached him and slapped him. Natsumi. I know you are an adult, Daiki, and that you can make your own decisions. But I have respected the decision that you see and have adult things in your room, as well as that you have a harem and that they live here, but what I will tolerate and respect the least is your infidelity towards those girls, she said seriously, looking at her son with disappointment. Natsumi. I know you're a dragon and you can take many women as your partner, but how many women do you want to have? Are Ria's and her friends not enough for you or what? Or is it that you just wanted to have them as objects to satisfy your needs? She said, asked seriously, while Daiki was looking away without having the courage to look his mother in the eyes or at her face. Daiki. But it's not my fault, it's just that he didn't finish speaking because his mother interrupted him. Natsumi. It's not your fault, so tell me, who started the infidelity? They or you? She said, asked, wanting to hear her son's version, however he remained silent. Natsumi. I'm disappointed in you, Daiki, she said in a serious tone, but also disappointed towards her son. Daiki. Disappointed in me, you say it as if Issei were here and was much better than me, without knowing that he could maybe be the same or worse. Then he didn't finish speaking as his mother slapped him again, but this time it was stronger than the previous one, since talking about Issei made his family upset. Natsumi. Don't even dare bring ice into this, Daiki, much less think that she didn't finish speaking as Daiki interrupted her. Daiki. You think that, huh? Come on, say it. There was no trace of Isay during all these 13 years, and yet you believe that he is alive, without stopping to think that maybe he could be dead. He didn't finish speaking because his mother pushed him hard. Natsumi. Get out of here, Daiki, get out, she exclaimed angrily, hitting the brown-haired boy, while tears came out of her eyes. Daiki-ka-san, he didn't finish speaking as his mother kept hitting him. Natsumi. Keep your words to yourself, Daiki, and get out of my house, go away, she exclaimed, still furious, while Daiki felt like the worst scum in the world. Kyoko. Get out of here, Daiki, or I'll kick you out of here, she said seriously, while a blue aura surrounded her. Daiki for his part didn't say anything and left the Haidu mansion. Kyoko, seeing her brother leave, stopped expelling that blue aura to approach her mother, who was crying in her father's arms. Hiro was going to take his wife to the room they share, but Kyoko offered to leave her in the hands of her daughter, while he proceeded to take all the teacups to the kitchen to wash them, along with the dirty dishes they had. Kyoko for her part proceeded to do what her father was going to do. After a while Kyoko arrived at the room that her parents shared. Once inside, Kyoko helped her mother to sit on the bed. After that she was going to take off her mother's shoes. Mitsumi. You don't have to do that, daughter, I can do it alone. Besides, I have to take off the makeup I'm wearing, she said with a broken tone of voice, taking off her shoes, feeling enormous freedom in doing so. Well, Kyoko stood up and then sat next to her mother. Kyoko. Don't pay attention to what Daiki said about Ice, Ka-san. He doesn't finish speaking as his mother interrupts him. Mitsumi. What if what he said is true? Kyoko. Who doesn't assure us or confirm that Ice is really dead or not? If in reality we have lived all these 13 years in a complete lie thinking that he would return, she said, asked with a broken tone, looking lost and making her daughter sad. Kyoko. I don't have the slightest idea, Ka-san, I always try to keep that thought away from me. But I still think and believe that Ice is somewhere in the world alive and maybe well, and that he will return. It won't be today, tomorrow or in a week, but I know he will return sooner or later, he will, she said, full of confidence and hope that her little brother will return. Mitsumi. It's kind of ironic, don't you think? Since I'm your mother, I should be the strongest here. But it seems that you and your father are much stronger than me, she said with a tone full of irony, but with a slight touch of amusement, making her daughter laugh a little, who just hugged her. Kyoko. I will always recognize you as the strongest in this house, Ka-san, apart from Tusan. I'm sure he will get jealous if I didn't name him, she said with a small smile, something her mother nodded in confirmation. Kyoko. You have grown a lot, my girl, you are undoubtedly a woman now, she said, proudly wiping away her tears and then caressing her daughter's head, knowing and recognizing many of the achievements her daughter had obtained. Kyoko. I'll go help Tusan tidy up a bit and maybe I'll stay overnight in my old room, she said, getting up ready to leave her mother's room, but not before. Kyoko. Rest well, Ka-san, and by the way, happy birthday, she said, giving her mother a kiss on the forehead and taking out a rather large bag from a magic circle. Kyoko. I hope you like it, she said, giving the bag to her mother, who opened it to find a beautiful white purse. Mitsumi. Daughter, this bag is, she didn't finish speaking because, unable to bear the surprise any longer, she got up to go hug her daughter. Mitsumi. Thank you very much, daughter, thank you very much, but how did you get it and how did you know I wanted it? She said, asked with a grateful tone and wanting to cry for her daughter's gesture, having those two questions in her head. Kyoko. It was a bit difficult to find that bag, especially the original one, but I found it while surfing the internet. Also, Ice and I noticed that you were looking at this bag that day when we went shopping, so we decided to buy you this bag when we grow up. Therefore you can consider it a gift between Ice and I, she said with a happy smile, seeing that her mother was better and remembering that day perfectly. Mitsumi. Thank you very much, daughter. Well, I'll let you go help your father, I'll go clean your room, she said while leaving her bag on the bed. Kyoko. It's not necessary, Ka-san, you rest, I'll clean my room, she said, knowing that her mother was going to clean her room as some kind of thanks for the gift she gave her. Mitsumi. Are you sure? If you want you can, she didn't finish speaking because her daughter was shaking her head. Kyoko. You don't need to do it, Ka-san, I'll do it myself, okay? She said with a tone sure that she would clean her room herself. Mitsumi. Sigh, okay daughter, thank you very much for the gift and rest well, she said in a very grateful tone, giving her daughter a kiss on the forehead. After that, Kyoko left her mother's room and then headed towards the kitchen. When she arrived, she saw her father washing the dishes, leaving very few. Kyoko. Do you need me to do something? Tusan, she said, asked, walking towards the fridge and taking out a jug of water, then taking a glass from a shelf. Hero. No daughter, we just needed to wash the dishes, that's all, he said in a confident tone. Kyoko. Okay, she said while drinking water that she poured into the glass. Hero. By the way, how is your mother? He said, asked with a worried tone towards his wife having finished washing the dishes. Kyoko. She's fine, Tusan. I was able to cheer her up a bit by assuring her that Ice is fine somewhere in the world, plus I gave her her birthday present. She said, having faith that her brother is fine. Hero. That's good, I just hope Issei is okay, he said hopefully, waiting for some kind of sign that would tell him that his son is okay. Kyoko. And what will happen to Daiki? Tusan, she said, asked, looking at her father who sighed in disappointment. Hero. I don't know what to think about him anymore, I'm wondering what I did wrong when I took care of them, he said in a somewhat serious tone, while rubbing his forehead a little. Kyoko. It's not your fault, Tusan, you did a great job taking care of us, but to be honest, I have no idea what's going on with Daiki. When we were kids we got along really well, but after he met that old man and met those two perverts, he's not the same anymore, she said, as she wondered about her brother's sudden change. Hero. For now we must be with your mother, although I highly doubt she will like my gift, he said with distrust that she will not like the gift he had, and I cheered up his wife, but that made Kyoko laugh. Hero. May I know what's funny about what I said? He said looking at his daughter with a little jealousy and annoyance after what she said about how Natsumi reacted to the demon's gift. Kyoko. I'm amused that you didn't notice that, too, she said with a tone full of amusement. Well, that completely surprised Hiro. Hiro? Realize what? He said surprised and curious about what his daughter said. Kyoko. Sai-san doesn't care about the material gift you're going to give her, after all she feels totally grateful that you're still faithful to her, even for what she's done and said to you. The best gift you could give her is to show the love you feel for her, she said sincerely. Well, Hiro didn't say anything, a little distrustful of what his daughter had said. Hiro? Are you sure about that? He said a little distrustfully looking at his daughter. Kyoko. 100%, trust me, okay? She said with a smile, to which Hiro proceeded to take a breath and courage to straighten up. Hiro. Okay, I'll trust you, daughter, he said with a tone full of total confidence and security towards his daughter's words, ready to turn off the lights in his house and lock everything, and then go to his room. Kyoko. Don't worry about it, San. You go with Ka-san, I'll take care of locking everything and turning off the lights, she said, knowing her father's routine, while putting the jar in the refrigerator. Hiro. Well, rest, daughter, he said in a grateful tone, going to his room. Kyoko, for her part, grabbed an apple from the refrigerator to proceed to turn off the lights and lock both the windows and the doors that were there. By the time Kyoko finished turning off and locking everything, the brunette had thrown her apple into the trash can in the kitchen. After that, she proceeded to grab a broom and go to her old room. Upon arriving, she turned on the light and noticed that there was a bit of dust. The brunette proceeded to open the windows and thus began to clean her room, or at least remove all the dust that was there. After a long while, the brunette was able to remove all the dust that was there and change the sheets and blankets. The brunette put on a pair of pajamas that she always kept stored in a pocket dimension. Once she was dressed in her pajamas, unable to bear the tiredness any longer, Kyoko threw herself onto her bed, enjoying the soft mattress that was just as she remembered it, but without realizing it, about 3 minutes later the brunette had fallen completely asleep. The next day. Now we see how Kyoko was coming down the stairs going towards the door of the Haidu mansion. The brunette was somewhat disheveled and also looked half asleep and still wearing her pajamas. Kyoko. Wait, I'm coming and please stop ringing the bell, she exclaimed a little annoyed, since because of the person who was ringing the bell she had to wake up and she had had another nightmare about Issei. Standing in front of the door, Kyoko was going to open it, but before doing so, she gave a big yawn and then opened the door, seeing a police officer. Officer? Good morning, miss, are you Natsumi Haidu? He said with a surprised tone, seeing the huge mansion she lived in. Kyoko. No, Natsumi Haidu is my mother. I am Kyoko Haidu, she said in a half-asleep tone. Officer? Could I speak to her or her father if they are available? Kyoko. They are sleeping, she didn't finish speaking, since her parents were next to her, half asleep and wearing their pajamas. Both. Good morning, officer, said both chestnuts at the same time and in a half-asleep tone. Officer? Good morning to you too, sir, Mrs. Haidu, he said, greeting both patriarchs. Hiro. What do you want to talk to us about, officer? He said with a curious tone, wanting to know what an officer is doing in his house at 7:30 in the morning. Officer? I'll be completely honest and direct, a few days ago a boy was found in an abandoned factory, luckily he is stable in the hospital, but I don't finish speaking, since I don't know what to say about the last part. Natsumi. But what, officer? She said curiously, wanting to know what the officer was going to say. Officer? There may be a small possibility that that boy is your kidnapped Issei son, Mrs. Haidu, he said in a somewhat serious tone, and being unsure that the boy who was found is the kidnapped son of the Haidu. Meanwhile, the three brunettes remained completely still like statues, none of the three could breathe until Natsumi's blood pressure dropped, falling to the ground. But Hiro managed to react in time, grabbing his wife, which worried Kyoko and the officer. Hiro. Natsumi, Kyoko, go get some water, he exclaimed, worried about his wife. Well, the demon went into the house in search of water, while the officer used his cap to give air to the brunette. After a few moments, Kyoko arrived with a glass of water which she had given to her father. Hiro for his part helped his wife to drink the water, slowly gaining composure. Hiro. Are you feeling better? Natsumi, he said worriedly, watching his wife's skin become a little lighter, leaving the pale one she had a few moments ago. Natsumi. I am, honey, but it's true what the officer said. Did you find my son? She said trying to get up, but her legs were shaking and it was difficult to do so. Officer? We are not very sure that it could be him, as I said it could be a small, very small possibility that it could be him, he said with a sincere tone, knowing that in these cases of kidnapped people, it was almost impossible to return them to their hometowns. Natsumi. Where is he? Is he okay? Or she didn't finish speaking because the officer interrupted her. Officer? "He's in the hospital, if you want I can take you," he said asked, ready to take the three of them in his patrol car. "All three of them? Please," they all exclaimed in a somewhat pleading manner. Change of scene. Now we can see how the Haidu family, disheveled and wearing their pajamas, were entering a hospital room after having filled out several forms. Behind them was the doctor who treated the boy. The doc just stood near the door watching the chestnuts. Meanwhile, the Haidu, getting closer to the stretcher, saw a 17-year-old boy with light brown hair. The boy was connected to a heart rate machine, as well as having a nasal oxygen tube. However, the boy's face was all battered and bruised, and his right eye was slightly swollen, and more wounds, including a few scars, could be seen on his arms. Itsumi approached the boy, once closed. The brunette crouched down, sadly and guiltily touching the face of the boy who could supposedly be her son. "Itsumi. What did they do to you, my child?" she said asked sadly, and unable to help it any longer, she began to cry when she saw the terrible state her son was in. "Hiro. Could we talk alone, doctor?" he said asked looking at the doctor, who just nodded to leave the room. "Hiro. Kyoko, I need you to stay with your mother, I'll be back in a while, okay?" she whispered near her daughter, who also wanted to go talk to the doctor. "Kyoko. But Tucson," she didn't finish speaking because her father interrupted her. "Hiro. I'll tell you what I know at home, for now I need you to be with your mother, can you do it?" he said asked seeing how his wife was crying while caressing the boy's cheek. "Kyoko. Okay, I'll do it," she said with a confident tone, while Hiro nodded. "Hiro. Thank you, daughter," he said in a grateful tone, leaving the room, and once outside, he headed towards where the doctor was. "Hiro. Can I know what happened to my son?" "Doctor," he said asked seriously, wanting to kill the one who left his son in that state. "Doctor. Mr. Haidu, I'll be completely honest with you, your son was tortured," he said sincerely and directly, something that left Hiro petrified. "Hiro. What, are you serious?" he said asked, surprised and not believing what he said. "Doctor. I'm serious, because of the wounds he has, the amount of blood he lost. The people who did that to him did it with all the intentions and hatred in the world," he said seriously, having seen different cases of homicides due to hatred, envy, revenge, etc. "Hiro. But why do something like that to someone like him?" he said asked sitting down while remembering how his son was someone very sweet and gentle, without having the ability to do any harm to anyone. "Doctor. Mr. Haidu, with all the years I've been here and I speak from experience, I'm sure that people did that to your son, they must be gangsters," he said seriously, also remembering that these types of cases can be connected to a mafia. "Hiro. Are you suggesting that my son has something to do with the mafia?" he said asked in a serious and angry tone towards the doctor. "Doctor. Maybe yes, maybe not, just think about it for a moment. He was brought to his hometown to die here, and when a mafia is betrayed or one of its members does something wrong, they take it too personally when it comes to killing them," he said seriously, while Hiro didn't know what to say about that. "Hiro. Do you have anything else to tell me?" "Doctor," he said asked still not believing that the boy who is possibly his son is linked to the mafia. "Doctor. Not for now, I still need your wife's signature and yours to do a DNA test and confirm if that boy is actually your son," he said, while giving Hiro a paper and a pen. "Hiro. It's okay, doc, thanks for everything," he said in a somewhat grateful tone, while the doctor just nodded and then left. Hiro got up from his seat to approach the door and look through the window at his wife and daughter talking to Issei. The chestnut entered the room to keep his wife and daughter company, wanting to be close to his possible son. Kyoko's POV plus a few weeks later. Finally, after a long time, Ataudo has returned, and this time I don't plan on making that mistake again. Now I have the power and the strength to protect him, even if I have to give my life for him. However, to make sure, Tucson and Kasan did a DNA test between them and Isay, and they also allowed them to do some studies in case it was necessary. Of course Kasan didn't take that very well, but he still did it, wanting to know if that boy was really Ice. We waited 2 whole weeks for the letter containing the DNA results to arrive. But when it arrived, Kasan and I didn't have the courage to open it, so we left it in the hands of Tucson, who, upon hearing the results, couldn't help but cry with joy and emotion. It was Isay, he was in his my little blood brother. The DNA test was 99.99% positive. It was not a mistake or an error, and it was certainly not modified. We knew that very well, after all they had to be careful if they did not want to lose their jobs. After that day, both Kasan and Tucson and I have been in the hospital day after day, night after night, just so that Ataudo would wake up. It's been almost 3.5 months since Ataudo was found. Of course we have been grateful to the person who found him in that factory. Unable to contain our gratitude towards that person, we couldn't help but pay him back either with money or valuable material things. We didn't care about those things, we just wanted to thank that person for saving Ice. As time passed, Atado's wound slowly healed, as did his broken bones, but whenever a nurse changed him, he couldn't help but feel like killing the son of a hitch who dared to touch him. In different parts of his chest as well as on his arms, but more on his back, Ice had different cuts, as well as burns and even bullet wounds, in addition to having very marked bruises on his chest and sides, but those were healed long ago. However, unfortunately for me, demons are prohibited from killing humans, or at least for those demons that follow that rule. And speaking of demons, I told Kaichu to stop looking for Ice after all, we had already found him. Of course I thanked him for the great effort and time he put into searching, but it was no longer necessary. However, during this time we have not heard anything about Daiki or what he was doing, because one day we went to his room. All his belongings were gone, not even a letter had been left. So we doubt he knew we found Ice, although if we had seen him around we wouldn't have told him anything about him. Present. We can see how Kyoko was in Issei's room, she was standing leaning near a window while reading a book on how to be a good older sister while eating a cereal bar. However, we will focus on the heart rate monitor that Issei was connected to, we can see how the chestnut's heart rate as well as his blood pressure were considerably stable. However, as the minutes passed, they gradually increased until Issei's left hand began to move. But as if that were not enough, the brown-haired boy moved his head from side to side while his eyes were about to open. "Please don't do it." The voice inside Issei's head said, until the sound of a shot was heard causing the aforementioned to wake up suddenly, breathing heavily and looking around. That had certainly taken Kyoko by surprise, but when she saw that her brother woke up she was so happy that she didn't hesitate a second longer and approached him. "Kyoko. Calm down Ice, calm down, I won't hurt you," she said, because when she was close to her brother, he moved away a little, looking at her with distrust and also seeing her as if she were a complete stranger. "Issei. Who are you? Do you know who I am?" he said, asked with distrust and some difficulty as he began to feel a terrible headache. "Kyoko. Calm down, I'm Kyoko Haidu, and I know you, since you're my little brother," she said with a happy smile, looking at her younger brother, but he moved away a little further, staying at the edge of the stretcher. "Issei. I don't know you, get away from me," he said with some distrust, while Kyoko laughed thinking it was a joke. "Kyoko. Come on Atado, don't think I'm going to fall for that joke," she said with an amused smile. But when she noticed how the brunette looked at her with those distrustful eyes and as if she were a stranger, she realized that it was not a joke. "Kyoko. Lo, are you serious, do you really not remember me?" Ice, she said, asked with a broken tone, as if she was about to cry. "Issei. And no, I don't know you," he said in a sincere tone, not being able to remember who the woman in front of him was. Kyoko for her part felt hurt that her own brother did not remember her, it was like millions of knives made with light magic, completely tearing her heart apart. "Kyoko. Stay here, yes, I will look for a doctor or a nurse, and please don't move," she said, leaving the room, looking for a nurse or a doctor. Issei, for his part, sat on the stretcher, removing the cables and the nasal tube. After that, the boy tried to get off it, but in the end he ended up tripping and falling to the ground. Issei got an enormous pain the moment he fell, he felt like his legs, as well as his arms had no energy, he practically felt like his entire body was too heavy. "Natsumi. Issei," exclaimed the Haidu matriarch upon seeing her son on the ground. However, Issei began to lose consciousness, managing to see how some nurses entered the room and saw the Haidu family worried about him. "Issei. Who am I?" he whispered at the last moment, then completely lost consciousness. Chapter 2. Adaptation. Authors Pav. Parking, a taxi stopped in front of the Haidu residence, which had stopped being that gigantic mansion and had returned to being that normal, simple house that it had originally been. Heading out of the front of the vehicle, Kyoko quickly went to open the back door, and from there Issei came out somewhat recovered with Natsumi following behind. Meanwhile, Hiro had stayed to pay the taxi driver. Back to the main thing. At the same time as the three brown-haired boys advanced, Issei looked curiously at both the house and the surroundings, being noticed by mother and daughter who hoped that he would remember something, even if that something was silly and insignificant. Taking the keys out of her bag, Natsumi used one of them to open the door and enter the residence, revealing a somewhat narrow hallway with frames hanging on the walls. After taking off their shoes at the entrance, the three of them began to walk down the hallway, and as they did, Issei looked closely at the various photos there were, but almost all of them featured Hiro, Natsumi, and three children in them. As he reached the end of the hallway, Issei saw what would be the main room of the house, feeling a warm atmosphere. He didn't see tall furniture, the only tall or rather long thing was the three-seater sofa with cushions on top. A square table with small eggs in the middle of the room and plants decorating the latter. Ice, have a seat," Natsumi said, moving aside some cushions on the sofa so that Issei could sit down. Somewhat unsure and doubtful, Issei slowly walked towards the sofa and sat down on it. Not knowing what to say, the brunette was saved from having to speak when he heard the door of the house close, having been Hiro who entered the living room. "Do you want a glass of water or something else, Ice?" Natsumi asked softly in her tone, looking at her son who seemed to be uneasy. "A glass of water, please," the brown-haired boy replied somewhat shyly, with his hands on his legs. "Very well. I'll be right back," Natsumi commented as she left the room, followed by Kyoko. Being a little calmer, Issei continued observing the interior of the house until in one of his glances, he could see a portrait on top of a piece of furniture that was near him. Getting up and going towards said piece of furniture, being at a considerable distance, the brown-haired boy grabbed the portrait, seeing that Hiro, Natsumi and the three children were in what seemed to be a park. Hiro, on the other hand, just watched what Issei was doing. Unlike his wife and daughter, he kept his distance from his son to give him his space, he already had enough with those two on top of him. Although he also did it so that he wouldn't feel forced to remember something, because a few days ago, he had been diagnosed with amnesia. 3 days ago. Watching from afar as Kyoko showed Issei a photo album and told him the story behind each one. The Haidu patriarchs were standing at the door of the room, witnessing the interaction their children were having. However, the sound of footsteps caught the attention of both adults, so without hesitation, they turned their gaze towards where those footsteps came from, which was the doctor who was attending to Issei. "Sir, Mrs. Haidu. I have bad news," the doctor spoke with pity in his tone, making both spouses and even Kyoko who was in the distance swallow hard as they prepared to receive the news. "What is it, doctor?" asked Hiro, fully prepared to face what was to come, as was his wife. "Your son has retrograde amnesia," the surgeon replied, having found it difficult to say, leaving the chestnut trees perplexed despite the preparations they had made. "The blow your son suffered 2 days ago caused the head trauma to become more serious than it already was. Although it is very possible that he had already had amnesia before that event," the doctor commented, leaving Hiro and Natsumi speechless, while Kyoko now understood why her brother did not remember her. "For the moment I will prescribe some medicines. But the rest will have to be taken care of by a neurologist," said the surgeon, seeing the dejected expressions of the Haidu patriarchs. "Still. It's okay, doctor. Thank you for everything," said Hiro, trying to show some optimism, receiving a nod from the doctor, and then he left. In the present. As much as she wanted to approach him and hug him, the Haidu patriarch knew that she had to be patient and keep her distance until that day came. But on the other hand, in the kitchen, Natsumi saw the glass of water that her son requested, however, in her hands, she held a small bottle containing phoenix tears. "Do you think it will work, Kyoko?" The Haidu matriarch asked, a little unsure whether or not to apply the phoenix tears to the glass. "President Sona told me that she will only cure his wounds, but not his memory loss," answered the strongest tower, having received the vial and the information from his king. "It's better than nothing," Natsumi commented, opening the potion and pouring it into the liquid. But that ready, Natsumi grabbed the glass and headed towards the main room, arriving to see how Issei observed a portrait, to later leave it on top of the furniture in which it was. The Haidu matriarch could only be discouraged, even so, she changed her expression to a happy one, and with that she approached her son. "Here you go, Ice," Natsumi said, handing her son the glass of water, to which he received it. "Thank you very much." Issei stopped talking, not knowing how to call Natsumi. "Mom, you can call me Mom," declared the Haidu matriarch with a smile, but inside she was very upset. "Okay Mom," Issei said with a hint of doubt. After that, he proceeded to drink the contents of the glass, which took him a few seconds. And before long, Hiro noticed how the wounds his son had disappeared in a matter of seconds, as if they had never been on his skin. Turning his gaze towards his wife, she noticed how her husband was looking at her, while Kyoko entered the room feeling the tension between her parents and her younger brother between them. "Hey Issei. Do you want to see your room?" asked Kyoko, approaching her brother, who had noticed the serious atmosphere there was. "It's okay," the younger brown-haired boy answered, hiding the discomfort he felt. Grabbing her brother by the hand, Kyoko led him starting at the stairs. Following that, they took a few steps down the second-floor hallway until they stood in front of a door that had Issei on it. Without wasting any time, the strongest tower opened the door to the room, revealing that it was completely clean. The walls were painted a bright blue color, a beautiful walnut wardrobe occupied a half of the room, as did a single seat cabinet and a pine desk that included a state-of-the-art computer. "What do you say? Do you like it?" Kyoko asked with a smile, after all, she had been in charge of remodeling the room. "Yes. She's very pretty," Issei answered sincerely as he entered his room, being impressed by what he saw, making his sister's smile grow. Although there would be some decoration missing, like some posters, a shelf with comics or mangas, even some collectible dolls. "What do you say?" asked Kyoko somewhat excitedly, looking at her brother, who seemed not to have understood anything she said. "Yes. Sounds good to me, Issei replied with a small nervous smile, watching as Kyoko extended her fist towards him. At first he didn't understand what it meant, so somewhat hesitantly he formed a fist with his hand and collided it with hers. It's a fact. Tomorrow we're going shopping, declared Kyoko excitedly, ready to spend every penny on her younger brother. But for now I'll let you rest. If you need anything, just shout, said the brunette, making her way out of the room, staying at the door before leaving. I will, said Issei, nodding in affirmation, so trusting in her brother's word, Kyoko left the room, but not before closing the door. After going down the stairs, Kyoko didn't see her parents in the main room, although, thanks to her demon hearing, she could hear them arguing quietly in the kitchen. The brunette assumed that they were arguing about her brother's sudden recovery, so without hesitation she headed towards the kitchen, and by the time she arrived, both her father and mother abruptly fell silent. I know that Kyoko couldn't continue speaking because she was interrupted by her father. Never mind, Kyoko, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Did Issei like his room? Asked Hiro, receiving a discouraged nod from his daughter. Yes, he likes me, but he felt uncomfortable, answered the brunette demon, having noticed how her brother's lips trembled when he smiled and his eyes showed a cloud of nerves. It's just a matter of time, as the doctor said, Patriarch Haidu commented optimistically, having no idea what to do. But what good is time to us, Hiro? Even if Ice regains his memory, he will only remember what he experienced with those bastards. He won't remember anything about us because they took him away when he was 4 years old, said Natsumi, raising her voice a little, which, little by little, seemed like it was going to break into tears. Without thinking twice, Hiro approached his wife and hugged her, feeling how she reciprocated by clinging to him tightly and burying her face in his chest, from which tears were flowing. I just want my son to stop seeing me as a stranger, Hiro. That's all I want, said Natsumi with a lump in her throat and tears, feeling her husband gently caressing her back. Me too, love. Me too. But the only thing we can do is be patient, Hiro commented, understanding his wife's feelings, but if she didn't break down before, she couldn't do it now. Later. Night had come to Kuo City. In every household, dinner was being prepared, and in the Haidu residence, that was no exception. In the kitchen, Hiro was helping his wife, who was already feeling better than before, but he couldn't and didn't want to leave her alone. Meanwhile, Kyoko was in the dining room putting the dishes on the table, but in the middle of her chores, she heard someone coming down the stairs, realizing that it was her younger brother. Did you sleep well, Issei? Kyoko asked, looking at the aforementioned, who had taken a nap of approximately 4 hours. Yes. Very well, Issei answered with a voice that denoted tranquility while he saw the plates that Kyoko had in her hands. How can I help you? The youngest Haidu asked, approaching his sister, who had only shaken her head. No need. I'm done, the demon replied as she left the last 2 plates on the table, to which Issei just stood still in his place, not knowing what to do or say, until he saw the portrait he grabbed several hours ago, having had a question that has been eating away at him ever since. Kyoko, can I ask you a question? Asked Issei, catching his sister's attention, who only turned to look at him with an expression that showed curiosity. Of course, what do you want to know? Kyoko commented, looking at her brother, who seemed to be unsure. Where is he, Daiki? Issei questioned, having heard the name of his other brother and seeing him in the photo album when they were children, but at no time did he appear. Daiki is busy at work. He usually has a lot of things to do, Kyoko lied bluntly, having anticipated her younger brother's question a few days ago. I see, Issei commented without saying anything else, but to the dismay of the Haidu family, someone rang the doorbell of the house. I'm going, Kyoko spoke out loud as she headed towards the front door of the house. The moment she arrived and opened it, she found herself facing Daiki's ex-fiancés. Girls, what a surprise to see you. Come on in, said Kyoko in a friendly manner, stepping aside so that her friends could enter the house, something they did not before taking off their shoes. Are you hungry? Mom is making stew, Kyoko asked as she led the girls into the main room. We appreciate the invitation, but no. In fact, we came because my mother informed me that they rebuilt their house, as it was. Ria stopped speaking when she saw an unknown young man put some glasses on the dining table before the redhead finished saying her line, only to remain silent. The girls just stared at Issei, noticing small similarities he had with Daiki and the Haidu patriarch. As for Issei, feeling observed, he turned around to find out who was watching him, being surprised to see the huge number of girls in the main room. Hello, Issei greeted somewhat nervously as he raised his hand, something the girls responded to. Hello, they all said almost in unison. It was obvious how confused they were. Until Kyoko decided to intervene. Girls, Irina. He's my brother, Issei, Kyoko commented with a smile on her face, surprising everyone who knew the aforementioned from what they heard about him, but among all of them, the most surprised was Irina. Is he, Issei? Really, is he? Irina asked in a choppy manner with an expression that showed shock. Yes, Kyoko answered while nodding, leaving her childhood friend speechless. At a slow pace, Irina slowly approached a confused Issei, but out of nowhere, Irina increased her speed to the point that she managed to hug the brunette without him noticing the moment she did it. I'm so sorry, Issei, Irina said through tears, while Issei didn't know how to react to that. It was my fault that Kyoko didn't watch you that day. It was my fault that you were kidnapped. Irina's voice detonated guilt, a guilt that had been eating away at her for too long, being this the reason why she refused to be the ace of the leader of the angels. Calm down, said Isay, reciprocating Irina's hug. Nothing's wrong, the brown-haired boy finished speaking while giving the exorcist a smile. Isay, the exorcist shouted, letting off steam after years of complete distress. Change of scene. So that's how they found him, said Ross, was sitting on the sofa in the main room, glancing at Isay, who was eating as if there was no tomorrow to the point of choking, receiving strong pats on the back from his father. We were lucky. That's what happened, Natsumi said with a small smile. Her son may not remember her, but at least she had him with her. You really don't remember anything? Asia asked with the belief that she can possibly cure memory loss. Nothing at all. We used a phoenix tear to cure him, but it didn't work. Besides, he would only remember what he experienced with those guys, since he was only 4 years old when they took him away, answered Kyoko, somewhat discouraged, making the ex-nun feel a little bad. Do you want me to investigate this matter? Both my brother and my father have connections all over the world, including federal agencies. Possibly in a few days they will discover who did this, Riaz offered, willing to give all her support to the Haidu family. I would very much like for everyone who was involved with my son to be brought to justice, but it doesn't matter anymore, Natsumi commented with a confident tone, observing her third son who was repeating his second dish. Now I have him, and what I want most is to make up for lost time, the Haidu matriarch finished speaking with a tone that showed happiness. Okay, Riaz said, getting up from the sofa, followed by her peerage and Irina. We are leaving, we have some matters to attend to. Riaz lied in order to leave and not interfere with the Haidu family any further. No problem. You can come whenever you want, girls, you know you're welcome, Natsumi commented with a smile, having grown fond of all of them. See you soon, Natsumi, Kyoko. Riaz said goodbye to both of them with a kiss on the cheek, as did her pieces. See you later, Hiro. Riaz raised her hand in farewell to Patriarch Haidu. See you later, Riaz, girls. Take care. Hiro also said goodbye by raising his hand. See you later, Issei. Riaz said goodbye to the younger brunette with her hand raised and a smile. See you later, Issei commented as he waved goodbye, feeling how everyone except Irina had a strange presence that made him uneasy. The next day. Sitting in a documentation center, Kyoko waited for her mother and brother to finish filling out the latter's documentation data. Until at one point, she saw them approaching her, so without further ado, she stood up and walked towards them both. Is everything ready? Asked Kyoko, curiously looking at both her mother and her brother. It is. But Ice will have his document in a month, Natsumi said, keeping the ticket she had been given in her wallet, which she ended up keeping in the bag Kyoko gave her. A month? Kyoko asked, a little disappointed, being sure that she would have gotten all the documents for Issei in the underworld. It was the closest turn there was, Natsumi answered, just as disappointed as her daughter, but as usual saying, it's better than nothing. Sigh, it doesn't matter. Apart from buying things for lunch, what else can we do? Asked Kyoko, looking at her mother, who became thoughtful at that, although when she remembered the presence of her son, she noticed how he had long hair and her husband's clothes were a little big on him. Let's take advantage of the opportunity to buy some clothes for Ice and take him to a hair salon, Natsumi replied, slightly exasperating Issei, to which Kyoko remembered the agreement she made with her brother the day before. Let's do it. We could also buy some things for her to decorate her room, commented a very excited Kyoko. Issei, for his part, had no idea what trouble he got himself into. In that case, let's go, we don't have all day, declared Natsumi, grabbing her son by the arm, setting off before the day gets any later. Without having a voice or vote, Issei was forcibly taken by his mother and sister to the mall. After a long trip, the first thing they did when they set foot in the mall was to go to the clothing stores, buying almost everything, from short and long-sleeved shirts, jeans and sports pants, to socks, sneakers and underwear. Following that, they took him to the best barber shop and asked a barber to give Issei a striking cut with a rebellious touch, so to speak, something that the man captured perfectly. When he left the hair salon, the younger brown-haired boy looked completely different than before, and although his cut gave him a certain air of rebellion, the latter contrasted with the shy and somewhat innocent face he showed. Still, as they walked through the mall, Issei attracted the attention of one or another girl who walked by, something that made him nervous being noticed by his mother and sister, although the latter did not waste the opportunity to tease her brother a little. So you turned out to be a gallant, huh, said Kyoko with a mischievous smile, patting Issei on the back, which made him more nervous than before. What do you mean by that? Issei asked, trying to look calm, something that didn't work and that only made Kyoko's smile grow. Come on, don't lie. You noticed how those girls were looking at you, right? Said the stronger tower while nudging his brother. Well yes, but it's possible that it's for something, like an address, Issei said in a choppy tone with his cheeks reddened, making Natsumi laugh softly at his comment. Yeah, sure. An address, Kyoko commented sarcastically, stopping bothering her brother for the moment. Don't worry, son. At least you do notice the signs they give you, Natsumi said in order to relax her son, but for some strange reason, Kyoko felt that her mother's words were directed towards her with a hidden mockery. I don't want to sound paranoid, Mom. But did you imply something? Asked Kyoko, looking at her mother, who just turned around with a smile on her face, something that didn't please the demon very much. Don't you remember the sign Sarah gave you? The Haidu matriarch returned the question, leaving her firstborn bewildered. Sarah and I are just friends, Mom. Besides, he's dating Kusha, answered Kyoko a bit excited while trying to remember if the Belair really gave her a sign. We both know that Sarah sees and treats Kusha as a sister. So you still have time to accept his signals and possibly start a relationship with him, commented Natsumi, looking at her daughter, who seemed calm, but her face reddened, surprising Issei, who was just a spectator. We're just friends, Kyoko said in a light tone because she was embarrassed, not because of her mother's words, but because of the fact that she found out that she was in love with Sarah. You see, Issei. Two can play the same game, Natsumi commented, approaching her son, who had no words to describe what he witnessed, although his instincts warned him to be careful with the person in front of him. Now let's go home, okay? The Haidu matriarch asked her children, receiving a nod from Issei, while Kyoko remained immersed in her world. Kyoko, if you continue like this, I will leave you here and call Sarah to come get you, Natsumi declared from afar, causing the demon to regain consciousness and head towards her mother. I'm coming, said Kyoko, quickening her pace, but she was still embarrassed by what had happened. Later. Heat. Heat due to humidity. A huge room. With only one door and one ventilation duct. Children. Boys and girls, all between 4 and 6 years old. Dirty. Dirty, poorly dressed, glued to the wall and looking forward. 2 boys. One was 4 years old and the other was 5, both were about to fight. A 32-year-old man. I looked at that seriously. Begin, the man shouted authoritatively. Opening his eyes and quickly sitting up in his bed, Issei woke up completely agitated and covered in sweat from that dream. So much so that at first he didn't recognize anything of his surroundings, but after a few seconds, he was able to recognize it and little by little he regained consciousness. What was that dream? Issei wondered in his head, looking at the backs of his hands, which were full of scars. Could it have something to do with what happened to me? The brown-haired boy asked himself again, then turned to look at his alarm clock, seeing that it was 0:22 at night. Knowing that he wouldn't be able to fall asleep for a while, Issei got out of his bed and went to sit at his desk, only to turn on the computer. Once the device was turned on, the brunette proceeded to enter the search engine. Once inside, he typed amnesia key by key. But before he could hit enter, he deleted what he had written to only type missing boys and girls and searched for it. After that, dozens and dozens of articles about his search appeared in front of his eyes. Somewhere else. Sitting on a high-back chair, one could see the figure of a man wearing a dark blue suit of excellent cut. This man was about 45 years old and he remained silent, serene, with his body and chair pointing towards a wall. Aside from the man, a cute teenage girl was standing beside the door of the luxurious and clean office. This young girl's appearance consisted of her long black hair and gray eyes. For clothing, she wore a suit and a white cap that had a badge printed on it. On top of that, she wore a miniskirt that had a belt with a red heart printed in the middle. However, the peace that was in the entire room was disturbed by the entrance of a young man into the office. It was time to introduce you, Paolo, said the man as he sat down on the chair, to which the aforementioned man stood firm, bringing his feet together and placing his hands behind his back, looking very frightened. Translation. It's about time you showed up, Paolo. How are you? The man asked without daring to turn around, while Paolo was only looked at indifferently by the girl present. Translation. How did it go? Ethan is still alive, Father Paolo responded in a tone of voice that denoted fear, but above all, disappointment towards himself. Translation. Ethan is still alive, Father. It doesn't matter, I can tell you. You will receive your punishment later, the man commented seriously, to which the boy placed his right fist hard on his chest. Translation. It doesn't matter, you can leave. You will receive your punishment later. Yes, sir, declared Paolo in a loud voice. After that, he left the room and the girl positioned herself in the place where her partner was. Translation. Yes, sir. I imagine I'll have to eliminate Ethan, commented Matilde, standing up straight and with her hands behind her back. Translation. I guess I'll have to go and take out Ethan. That's it, Maddled. Take all the equipment that serves you and don't make Paolo's same mistake, the man ordered seriously, and doing the same as Paolo, Maddled put a right fist on his chest. Translation. Take all the equipment you need and don't make the same mistake as Paolo. Senior C, Signer declared the girl with conviction before leaving the office. Translation. Sir, yes sir. However, upon leaving her father's office, Maddled smiled with joy, as if she was going to enjoy the mission she was given, and without wasting time, she began to advance along the long corridor in front of her. Returning to the office, the man continued to stare at the wall, focusing on his goal, focusing on his wayward son. "I don't know how bad I am, Ethan. But you deserve it," the man said seriously, staring at the wall on which there was a photo hanging of a serious-looking Issei looking forward. Translation. You don't know how much it hurts me to do this to you, Ethan. But you deserve it. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.